So maybe we can start this special talk by Professor Rich Kelly. Thank you for everyone for coming to this special seminar. And I know everyone is very busy, so this is a very short and sweet talk for 30 minutes. And it is a great pleasure and honor to have Professor Rich Kelly to visit UCI, especially KIT 2. Let me give you a very brief introduction of Professor Kelly. He is a world-renowned scholar in the area of biochemistry and biophysics. And he was a former executive vice chancellor at the UCSF before he led the QB3 as a director. As you know, QB3 is one of the 4 Great Davis Institutes in Science and Innovation. And at UCI, we have a KIT 2. They have a QB3. And he is a newly appointed senior advisor to UC presidents on innovation and entrepreneurship. So let's welcome Professor Kelly for his talk.
Thank you for reminding me. We have 3 campuses. QB3 is Berkeley, UCSF, and UC Santa Cruz. The key thing that we do, of course, is what every academic institute, this is the mission of UC, right? Educate, do research, and do public service. We are more focused on public service, and I'm going to emphasize the service mission of QB3 today. So what do we do for public service, right? Main thing we think that's good to do around universities is to enable entrepreneurs, because disruptive technologies should be coming out of our, and disruptive technologies are more appropriate to go into startup companies. So we have these 4 different services that we apply to help our entrepreneurs. Let me just tell you a little bit about how it works. One of the things we try to do is to create an ecosystem. So initially, there's 3 campuses here at the university. What we then try to do is create the startups here. I'm going to quit using this little red thing. So what we try to do is make startups. Now, it turned out that was actually very important, because the startups attracted a whole lot of industries to want to come to the community. The industries can go to any campus, right? There's campuses all over the country. What we found was more attractive about coming to around QB3 was we had all these startups. They were just as interested in our startups as they were in our faculty. Our faculty don't like that, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, but now when we had the startups around the university, then of course that brought in the industry. But when you got the industry and then a lot of services wanted to start coming in, like all of the people who are the banks and the lawyers want to come and start giving us free services. And then finally, this really got the knowledge of all the government people and federal and the state level, because we're actually we're improving the local economy. So we started off in a really rundown area of San Francisco, really depressed area. We've actually now made it so it's one of the most attractive areas of San Francisco to live in now. So that attracts the interest of government planners. So that's what we did. The startup in a box, important. One of the things actually, with all due respect to my faculty colleagues here, we don't actually very much like starting companies with faculty members, because to be honest, being a faculty member is a soft job. It's an entitled job. Your labs are paid for. You got nice grants. It's easy. for an entrepreneur, you want someone who's going to work 24/7 and live off top ramen, right? And who is ideally trained to do that, right? We all know our graduate students and postdocs, right? We train them to work really hard and live on next to nothing. So they are the ideal people to start companies, because starting a company is really tough. It's hard work. However, they don't know anything about business and they don't have any money, right? So how do we take care of that? So our Startup in a Box is designed to, it's not a class, right? You can download anything you want to read from the web nowadays. You don't need to take classes. What this is actually a service. Someone comes in individually. I want to start a company on this thing. So we connect them to all these legal companies so they can incorporate. We teach them to write an SBIR grant. Our probability of being funded is 3 times the national average, people taking our class. And we put them up with mentors. We teach them how to give a pitch, right? Because that becomes really crucial if you want to raise money. And we do help them connect with free services from the law school. They do freedom to operate work. The next thing is then, where are they going to do their work? Now, in life sciences, you can't do it in a coffee shop. You can't start your company. You really need to have a bench and somewhere with some equipment to do things. So you need to have what they call a wet lab space. So what we actually started, and I won't go through the whole day, but we started with the QB3 garage about 6 or 7 years ago. It's now grown up. We have 5 different sites for incubators, 103 companies here. Now, the crucial part here from the point of the University of California is in each year, these companies are bringing in about 150 million into the local economy, right, through small business grants, angel, and venture investments. This is the sort of number that caught Janet Napolitano's attention, right? Because if we can show that the campuses that would all be bringing in a couple of $100 million a year into their local communities, then she has a really powerful and say, give me more money for these innovation initiatives, and your return of investment is going to be 10, 100-fold, right? It gives her a very strong financial argument for getting resources from the state, and also created about 400 jobs. I wanted to mention this one. This is the one we're proud of. This is our latest incubator, QB3 at 953. My colleague, Doug Crawford, and I actually just signed a 20-year lease on this really broken down old building. It's an LLC outside the university, so we try to become entrepreneurial ourselves, even though I'm a professor. And so we signed a lease. How are we going to remodel it? How are we going to make it look like labs? We raised money from investors, $4 million from those investors, and redirected it to a very quality lab now. So we opened this up, and we charge. Nobody subsidizes us. So we charge actually quite a lot, so as little as we can, but we still have to survive because no one subsidizes us. We didn't know how quickly it would fill up. Within 6 months of opening, we were full with 45 companies. The demand to get in, the demand is fantastic, right? So it's clearly there's something like this works. And that's actually, we don't subsidize this, we make money. As far as we know, we're the only incubator in America in life sciences that actually makes money. That's what happens when you have a Scotsman in charge, right? So now we had this thought, well, making money of rent is not really enough. Can you actually find some other way of subsidizing your innovation activities? Because you get really tired going begging to government things and to philanthropists and to companies to pay. Can we actually make ourselves self-sustaining? So we thought, now, look, we're looking at what we got each year. We're looking at something like 100 companies a year in our Startup in a Box incubator. If we could make a fund that invested in only 3 or 4 of those per year, we could really pick the cream of the crop here, right? So how could we do this? Well, we don't, and this is something that, so we thought, let's start a venture fund. This is very different from most venture funds. Most venture funds, the VCs cannot go wandering around your labs saying, have you got anything good? We don't allow VCs to wander around our halls. I'm a professor, right? I'm also a managing partner of this fund. So I can walk around and say, hey, that's a really nice piece of work. Why don't you start a company around it and let us invest in you? The other thing that you can do, being a university that no venture fund can do, is we have all these people, usually sort of semi-retired people like myself, who want to actually give back. They're educated, talent philanthropists. angel philanthropists. And so they are very, very willing usually to be part of the exciting environment of a university and come and give their talents pro bono to the community. So we have an advisory committee, an investment advisory committee that's made of absolute blue ribbon. Everyone can't believe who we've got attending, including Brooke Byers of Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield and Byers, right? Probably one of the best known investors in the Bay Area. So we have this blue ribbon panel who looks at the companies I see, saying the science is good, but they actually say whether it's a good investment. So, so with our fund, it's fairly standard. If you know the standard sandhill things, we normally 80%. So we raised the money from limited partners. We wanted limited partners all had to be net worth individuals or companies of greater than $1 million. We raised 10 million. 80% of the profit goes back to the LPs. 20% of the profit comes back to QB3. So we're using other people's money to raise money for us. So this has actually worked very well. Yeah. A good question. Yeah. You're right. Excellent, excellent question. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I should have mentioned it. Both our incubator and our venture funds are LLCs outside the university, right? So they're completely independent entities. And that puts a firewall between the university and ourselves as a great advantage. We don't have to deal with all those problems that you just described. But why does the university allow me to do this? Because I'm employed by the university. Because the profits from the venture funds and the incubator comes back to the university. The university is very happy with an arrangement to have outside LLCs as long as the profits are coming back. That's the only connection the University of California has to these two LLCs, is they accept the profits. So that works. Sorry, go ahead. I'm 100% of the university. I'm allowed to do this because although I'm a general partner in both LLCs, I don't get reimbursed for doing it, right? And people who get involved in conflict of interest, they don't care if I'm crazy enough to do a job for nothing. It's if you get money back, that's where people start getting very offended. Right? Anyway, so now Len, that's what we've done, and that's why Janet came and Janet Napolitano looked at us and thought this maybe is good. And we've been talking about where we might go in the future. So this is the speculative stuff. Now I've put confidential on this, not because it's really confidential. It's just because in my current position, if I say anything officially, right, it can go in the media and I have to defend it because of the Freedom of Information Act, right? So I don't mind. So please just don't call up your local newspaper and say I said this. Okay, I ask you as a favor. Otherwise, so what's the ideas here? Well, for Janet Napolitano and for me, yeah, you want to do something really big. If you're going to put a lot of effort into something, go for something huge. So what's the biggest thing to happen in the University of California in the last 100 years? It was probably the master plan of education, right? That turned an agricultural station in Davis into UC Davis, helped bring in the medical school into UC Irvine. This sort of things, the Clark-Kerr plan, to try and elevate the whole make the 10 campuses of the University of California. That was great. So can we begin to think of what the next step would be? And can we be thinking of, can we just devote the University of California, of course, maintaining its excellence in research and education, but can we become excellent in public service as well? And can we do that by having a master plan for innovation in the public service? So how are we thinking about this? Well, why do we want to do it? Two aims, right? We want to convert our creativity into benefit of society, and we want to create jobs in California. Remember, we're a land-grant university, right? We're a state university. We're created in order to help the economy of California. Stanford wasn't, right? USC wasn't, but all of the University of Californias are created to try and bring benefit to the citizenry of California. So that's our goals. The model is to look at 5 academic health centers in California, right? They're all the University of California. They're all very successful. They're sort of the crowns of the jewels of the University of California. Now, when you think about them, they're really a very unusual structure, right? Here we've got an academic entity, professors, students, classes, research, all the standard academia stuff, fused at the hip to a business, right? The hospitals are a business. They've got to make money in order to survive. They've got to provide service to society. So here we already have within the university a model of a very unusual hybrid where we've hybridized academia to a business. And it works, right? Because the ideas go from the university quickly into the health center. The problems come from the health centers back into the labs. It's a symbiosis that works. That's why academic health centers are doing so well. Now, why don't you, the model here is, so this is a porous boundary between a public academic thing and a private business. Right? We're used to that. So take away the hospital as a business and put in, instead, an incubator, right? And call it now an academic innovation center. And you see you have all the same benefits. All the ideas, disruptive innovations and so on are flowing from academia into the private sector. You know, the clinical insights, talent, state-of-the-art facilities that we have here. And conversely, what comes back from the business is these market insights, unmet needs and opportunities, and training opportunities for our students. Chances for our students to actually learn what it's like to be around an incubator and actually do it. It's all the same way as people go to medical school, they practice on patients. Here in an academic innovation center, our students practice around an innovative environment. So that's sort of the model. Can we actually create as many as, 5, 10 academic innovation centers for the University of California? That's the sort of the question of the master plan. It builds, we can do it. I've been checking around all the campuses. I'm trying to get out every campus in my first 6 weeks in the job. That's why I'm here. And so we've got lots of talents already that I'm just finding out about. But now, one of the things that, now to get down to practical things, how can we actually make this happen, right? Because you don't just want to have a spacey idea. You want to see how you can make it happen. So here's one idea that I'm pushing right now, but it's not been approved. Right? I want to get feedback. We know that university research usually works very well by interacting with the startups. That's what I said before. We're really good at startups. And we need seed. The big trouble is to find seed funding for the startups coming from our universities, where that's going to come from. Now, where venture funds usually come in, venture funds don't usually interact with the universities very much. The venture funds look around the startups and invest Series A, B, and C in them, right? That's the general way it goes. Now, what we did at QB3 was to solve the seed funding thing, right? So we were able to take the science coming out of QB3's lab, UCSF, Berkeley, and UC, and turn them into life sciences startups. And we've got a seed funding mechanism through our Mission Bay Capital. And it's working very well, right? We've just closed a second fund at 25 million. So it was, once you got your first fund successful, your second one becomes a lot easier. So it's worked because what we've got is new products have come to help mankind. We're making local economic growth, as I mentioned earlier. We're bringing money back to support QB3 services. This is a money-making venture. And we're actually fostering entrepreneurship on campus. So now, here's the model. Could we actually think of doing this over all of the University of California, where any campus could have one or more little startup funds if it wants it, right? And those could be in whatever area they chose, and I've gone around several of these already. So, you know, UC Berkeley is very strong in engineering. UC Davis wants to do agriculture and food products. So each one could have a fund focused on an area which is of local expertise, right? And they would all have their own venture fund. Now, where is the money going to come from, or where's the incentive for, say, UC Davis to start its own venture fund? What I'm trying to persuade is that it can come in the following way. As you probably know, Janet has just set aside $250 million from our pension plan, right, into a UC venture fund, right? Now, couldn't we, all of these, our little funds, feed in to the UC venture funds? Remember, venture funds haven't got access to the labs. We do in QB3, but venture funds can't go into the labs. So this is a way that we can actually populate the venture fund, and by giving the venture fund our more successful companies, this is how we can make this venture fund be a success. Now, what I would really like to have happen is that some fraction of this venture fund, 10% or so, be split up and sent back to the campuses. I would be able to say to you here in Irvine, well, I'll give you 2 million if you match it with 6 to give an 8 million fund, right? So it gives you money to nucleate your fund. Now, one of the things for those of us who've been raising funds, the first couple of $1 million are the hardest to get. If you can go to VCs and say, I already have a couple of million in the pocket, if you match it, it's much, much easier. So this could be a way that we actually help nucleate the whole process in this. So this is the sort of thing that I'm trying to, talking with Jagdeep and so on, and the people in the Chief Investment Officer's Office of the Chief Investment Officer, to see if we can make this happen. So let me just end up. Well, so what advantages of this whole thing? Remember, this, by the way, we would be the first university in the world to do anything like this, right? So it's a really pretty innovative way of going. So what's the advantage? We as scientists can actually have access to labs, as I said earlier, which venture people don't. We're taking advantage of all the expertise we have on the campus. Most venture funds can't do that, but one embedded on the campus could use the local faculty to help. We actually leverage the UC venture fund. If we do a 1 to 3 match, we're actually getting $3 for every $1 they put in. UC Ventures will succeed because we're giving them our hottest companies, and it's really important for this university that UC Ventures Fund works. Promotes local economic growth. Also, I think for all the entrepreneurship activities we have on campus, it gives a really nice focus. Business plans are great and so on, but when you try to make pitches to get a $250,000 instead of a $25,000 investment, you've got to get a little bit more sophisticated, right? So you're upping the bar and you're making the entrepreneurship activities on campus much more focused on how you can behave in the real world, right? Which is to raise money from venture capital. I'd like the idea of the profits from these activities coming back to support entrepreneurial activities on campus. I wouldn't want them to see them taken away by the chancellor. I'd like them to stay to keep fueling the pump and providing proof of concept funding, for example, within the campus. This model energizes the campus to be involved. It's very hard if you come from UCOP to get the campuses to care. And so this is a way of making sure the campuses actually want to participate. And of course, all this is modeled on the QB3 fund, which we know is working because we just raised our second fund. So that's actually where I'm at to finish off. My action items I'm thinking of doing is to try and get the fund of funds to get the office, the Jagdeep Bacher to agree to put some money into a fund of funds so that we can offer to campuses like Irvine, do you want to start your own venture fund? What I'm also trying to get from all the campuses is a way to accumulate data on how much impact you're having on the local economy. As I said earlier, we were found that over 6 years we brought $500 million into the Bay Area economy for an investment of $800,000 a year. Huge ROI, right? If we could try to get that data assembled in a poolable way from all the 10 campuses and 3 national labs, we have a tremendously powerful argument with the legislature that we deserve to have these activities funded. Another thing that I think Janet has agreed to, many of the things that are being done on campus and innovation are coming from the technology transfer offices and so on, which is really good. But from my point of view, that we really need to make sure we have faculty leadership, right? I think I've been able to get things done at UCSF because I was a vice chancellor, right? And I was a well-known scientist. Having a faculty member leading this says this is an appropriate activity for a university. A faculty member leading public service activities in this area. So Janet, so she was willing to, tentatively, to set aside some of her endowment money to endow presidential professors in innovation entrepreneurship on campuses that apply for them. We don't know how many she'll have. It'll probably be a competition. I don't know if every campus will have one or whether there'll be more than one per campus. She's already told the chancellor she intends to do this, so this is happening. And then one of the things that I really want to do is explore this idea of this academic innovation center concept. So say, can we actually take the idea of a health center, adapt it to be an innovation center, and can we in California be the worldwide leader in trying to do the first important innovation in educational structures in the last 50, 100 years or so? So this is the sort of ambition that we have right now. Did I stay within my time? Good. So any other questions on this? Those were good ones. But did you have another one up there, I thought? Oh, well, then I'll try again. Yeah. 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 Well, that's very good. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm sort of coming around here to try and see, one, are any, one of the things I learned as a faculty member, you don't try and tell other faculty members what to do, right? They don't like that. And similarly within institutions, you don't, if you say I'm from UCSF, let me tell you at UCLA how to do it. That goes over like a lead balloon, right? I'm not coming to tell anybody how to do it. I'm coming asking, right? And I'm saying, if you want here to try to model any of the things we've done, we're putting together a playbook on how we ran our incubators, how we did the evaluation, how we decided how much equipment to do it, how much we charge rent and all that stuff. Our experience, which we're happy to share with anyone. We're happy to have people come up and be interns for a week, a month, it could be 3, learn how we do these things. We're happy to have people on the staff coming down and as being consultants to help you do that. But that's only, unfortunately, the only way this is going to work is if somebody here in Irvine really is passionate about making this happen and say, let me try and come and talk to me and say, I could make it happen. I've got a plan to make Irvine like a QB3. And what I need to do that is the following, right? And you'll always be money, I know that, right? But you make it a reasonable amount of money, saying if we injected, say, $500,000, $2 million into this particular constriction thing in the pipeline, that's what I think would make a big difference. That's the sort of thing that I need to hear, right? Because every campus, I think, the constriction point is at a different place, and you have to tell me where the constriction point here is here in Irvine. I don't know it, right? Yeah. Your Institute in Innovation here, into that. I've been doing this job 6 weeks, right? So, until very recently, I was very parochially involved with QB3 in San Francisco area, so I'm just moving around. I just heard about Evo Nexus this morning, for example. I am happy to work with any campus area like the Institute of Innovation, but we make a distinction. I make a distinction in my head. There's a whole lot of things that go on campus, right? Entrepreneurial courses, teaching people to run classes and mentorship. That's what academics do really well, right? And I think every campus has a very rich infrastructure for teaching classes on innovation, entrepreneurship. What we're doing, we're actually outside the university, and we're doing hands-on stuff, right? We're talking about practical things like having a venture fund, having an incubator space run by the university or managed by the university, but outside the actual standard teaching things.
Right, I understand that, but Richard is also creating.
Richard Sudak? Yeah, sure.
Outside the university, because he's creating a venture capital firm
Yes.
to partner with
Yes.
Irvine.
Right. No, I talked to Sudak 2 days ago. He was up in Oakland, so I know him. And I talked to Gregory Washington. He was up in my office about a day ago. So I'm trying to find out what's going on on the campuses, but I'm just at the very beginning.
So right now, to answer your question, at the UCI, we do have a constant efforts and trying to, we have incubator headquarters at Owen, and in Titan Innovation, we have incubator, and we have the 10 10 and 10 competition. They're all working together, so we try to mimic the model has been developed at the QB3. I think that is the way we can really answer Peter's question. That is what UCI is having.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that an immediate follow-on?
Well, because one, it costs $100 million to build my building, and I can tell you there's not $100 million in the system right now to do another one. But it's a good question, and so this is one of the things that I'm actually thinking about. To what extent might, for example, suppose the Center of Transportation Research was down here at Irvine. Then if anybody came through up in San Francisco who was a company wanted to do in transportation, they might want to sort of interact with the venture group that's down associated with UC Irvine, right? So we could imagine having a consortium of these little funds where we just feed the technology. So then if there was somebody down here who wanted to do a life sciences startup, they can do it up in QB3.
So I'm the director of Naloxone Center.
Uh-huh.
When that came out, the California Senate had a hearing around this. And part of the issue we tried to raise with them
Yes.
is why not? Precision life science, because drug discovery was sort of a focus of what
Sure.
we were doing. They were very much behind that idea. And California, remarkably, is in the black again.
Yes.
I mean, is there a hope that these kind of instances can happen again? And that's a great starting point.
It would be a great starting point. As you probably know, our governor and our president are not getting on too well. So
Well, it might be a carrot.
keep hoping. So, yeah. Yes, it is. We actually had, no, the QB3 does something a little bit different, actually. That we take the money and we put 80% of it goes to support research and education on the 3 campuses, right? We take 20%, which is 800,000 out of the money we get each year, and use that for our innovation and entrepreneurial activities. We're the only one, so when I say we put QB3 money in, it's not from the research budgets, because my colleagues would never allow me to do that. It's only this 20% that we skim off the top for entrepreneurial activities. Pardon me? Well, yeah, QB3 is a not-profit, but actually both of the LLC and the incubator, both LLCs are for-profit, actually. There were some advantages for not-profit, but if you're for-profit and all your for-profits coming back to the university, it turns out in some ways it's easier to do it as a for-profit and return your profits to the university than. No, the 800,000 goes, I have a staff of about 6, 8 people, right? And that pays, it doesn't cover it all. Our budget's about 1.4 million. I raise the other 600,000 from other sources each year. So it's costing QB3 about 1.4 million a year to run the efforts it does. That's, we do a lot of other things as well in addition. So the LLC is separate, right? It's got its own budget. We don't put any university money into the LLCs, right? We can't do that. Yeah. Absolutely agree with you. And I think, what's constraints, right? The only constraint that I feel is that whatever we do has got to help the economy of California. So if a company comes, somebody wants to get funding from us, but they're going to go set off in Massachusetts, we won't fund them, right? And so anybody so our criterion when people ask us for help is, will this help the economy of California? And if it will, then we will help them, right? It turns out in our incubator, less than half the companies are from the University of California. Some of our more successful ones are from Stanford, because Stanford doesn't have anything like this, right? So, but we don't care. A lot of our companies actually come from, churn within the industry, like some industry spins off something, some person wants to take their idea out to the industry, they will come and do a startup with us. So about half of the people in our incubator are actually not university associated at all. We justify that because we're trying to help the California economy. So I agree with your point completely. Okay? Well,
Any
all
other
right.
questions?
Well, thank you very much for your time. And
Thank Professor Kelly.